If you've been told that an autism evaluation has to take months, I want to challenge that. A lot of evaluations take months because they're built on a model that does them in 1 to 2 hour blocks, not because that's the only way to be thorough. I'm Dr. James Thatcher. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist in Portland, Oregon at Forest Psychological Clinic, and I've done over 2,000 comprehensive autism assessments throughout my career. And in those assessments, I'm not just looking at autism, I'm looking at ADHD and a whole different array of different issues. Again, I want them to be comprehensive. And today, I'm going to compare our 1 day assessment model against the more common multi-day assessment model. So you can understand what you're really paying for, what accuracy actually looks like, and so you can make the right decision on what's the best fit for you or your child. And we're going to do this in 3 different steps. Why a lot of clinics spread their evaluations out over multiple sessions, how we're able to do it in 1 day without cutting any corners. And I want to give you 3 questions that you can ask any clinic before you book that's going to help you come to a better decision. So first, I want to talk about why so many clinics spread the evaluation out over 3, 4, 5 different appointments. And the big reason for this is simply just how their schedule is structured, to where they only have 1 to 2 hour increments that they can plug in for these appointments. That means the evaluation has to happen in pieces. So on one appointment, you'll have your interview. On another appointment, you do some testing. You might do some more testing on another appointment. The evaluator is going to have to reach out to some collateral information on another appointment. And then finally, you schedule your feedback session. And I want to be very clear about this next point. That approach can be done very well. There are plenty of clinicians out there. In fact, the vast majority of them that take a thoughtful approach to this. They want to sit with the data. They want to reflect back on what they found. They want time to write up what they found and then reflect on that. And that's great. More power to them. But there's a trade-off with that model that a lot of people don't realize until you're in it. Every extra appointment adds more waiting, more risk of rescheduling, and longer time between when you are asking the question, what is going on with me, and having an answer. Because here's the thing, kids get sick, work schedules change, folks have a bad morning, life happens. And the more times you have to coordinate that date, the more chances that something falls apart and the timeline starts to stretch. And sometimes this timeline is weeks, sometimes it's months, sometimes it's a lot longer than that because there's a lot of moving parts to this model. And now I want to go over the part that hurts people the most. And I've heard this quite a bit when folks do a multi-session model in order to do an autism assessment. There's the obvious cost, right? Missing out on work, missing out on school, transportation, daycare costs, things like that. But there's also something that I think of as a limbo tax, the mental and emotional cost of not knowing. Because when the evaluation is spread out, you're stuck in that thought process of, well, maybe it's autism, maybe it's ADHD, maybe it's just anxiety, maybe it's trauma, maybe I'm making all of this up. You're stuck in that limbo for weeks, if not months. And adults will often tell me, I'm worried that I'm going to forget something important. And parents often tell me, I just want to know what's going on so I can get them the help that they need. And all of that makes sense. It's hard to make good decisions when you don't have a map. So here's the heart of why we do it differently here at Forest Psychological Clinic. For the right person, the 1 day model is better because you get the answers that day. You don't have to keep coming back and getting rescheduled and getting appointment after appointment and just string things along over a long period of time. You get it that day. And there's a practical benefit to it too, right? You don't have to keep taking off of work or school. You get it in one single day You take off one day and then that's it. You're done. For adults, our sessions tends to be a full day. We tend to start at 9 a.m. And for adults, I usually get done around 3 o'clock. Same thing with the other clinicians here. We usually get done around in the early mid-afternoon. But for kids, it's often a little bit sooner than that. The day is a little bit shorter because there's not as much history to go over for a child. And clinically, and this is just me speaking, there's another benefit that a lot of people don't quite realize. As a clinician, when I can do the evaluation in one day, I can hold the whole story together. I can follow the entire line. I get to sit with this information and be with that person and that family the entire day, and I learn everything about that. And when cases are spread out over time, well, that can fragment things, right? So where if I see the person, one week and then I don't see them again for another couple of weeks, I've got to, I'm just speaking for me personally, I've got to go back into their chart and reread everything that I've written, everything that I've tested them on, and refamiliarize myself with the case every single time. So things can get fragmented over a long period of time, especially if I'm doing multi sessions and not seeing them in one single day. So the thing is, for me, in a one-day model, I keep everything fresh. I can keep everything clear in my mind. Now let me go over some questions that I often get asked. One common question that I get asked, especially about this one-day model, is how can I make sure that the evaluation is accurate, especially if I just do it in one day? And again, that's a common question, and there's nothing wrong with asking that question. I totally get it. That makes sense why you would ask that. And here's my response to that. Accuracy doesn't come from more calendar time. Accuracy comes from getting multiple sources of information that line up. So here's what that means in plain language. Here's how we actually go about it. Before the day of the appointment, we're already gathering information. We do a brief interview on the phone and we send out questionnaires, evidence-based questionnaires that gather information already. So the family's already filling out intake paperwork. They're filling out those online measures. We're using standardized questionnaires that get to their adaptive functioning, that get to their day-to-day functioning. And we're getting it from multiple sources, from that person themselves, their parent, their spouse, whomever. That way, it's not just one person's report. It's someone who knows them really well. And another thing that I do, and I especially do this with adults, is I encourage them to write down a symptom list. So write down your different life experiences, the different things that's been happening to you, your different symptoms before you come in that day. And a lot of the time, what I'll have them do is I'll have them write it down, and then the day before their appointment is to send it to me. Because when we do the consultation or when that person comes in, it might be a little while. So you've got plenty of time to write down these different things so you don't forget. A lot of what happens with adults is they get really anxious about this appointment. And again, this makes sense. This is a life-changing evaluation. And what anxiety can do is it's hard for folks to concentrate when they're worried. You might forget things. So writing it down ahead of time, making a symptom list and sending it to me, I'll review that. And what I do on the day of the evaluation is I sit down and I review everything that that person has sent to me ahead of time. So their symptom list, the intake paperwork, the online measures that they filled out, any collateral information that we were able to gather before they come in. I score all of that. I interpret it. So when the person walks into my room, I already know quite a bit about their case. And then during the evaluation, so when the person is actually in the room with me, I'm looking at autism related issues. I'm looking at executive functioning, attention, hyperactivity, so things related to ADHD. I'm using tests that evaluate for that. I'm also looking at mental health patterns that can overlap with one another. So anxiety, depression, trauma, personality issues, anything and everything that can overlap with the presenting issue. And also what we're doing is we're doing a structured interview that day, going over all of their medical issues, all of their concerns, going over their developmental history. And another thing that I'm doing, and I'm clocking the entire time, is I'm doing behavioral observations. So, how does the person approach a task? How are they presenting that day? What's their conversational abilities look like? How do they communicate with me? How do they communicate with even the support staff here? And how do they cope with stress in the moment? Because again, this is a very stressful day, and I realize that. And when it's appropriate and helpful, I bring in collateral information. If it's an adult, I'm going to be trying to talk with their parent or their spouse, their partner, their roommate. If that's not possible, I've got other things that I can do. Try and talk to like the past friend. You know, there's different things that I can do. Or if it's a child, obviously the parent's going to be there, but sometimes I can also talk to the person's therapist, or their medication provider or their teacher. And if that particular person isn't able to make it that day, as long as they can fill out a release of information and ROI, I can talk to them ahead of time and interview them. I've done that plenty of times to where maybe if it's an adult, maybe the only person in their life that truly understands them is their therapist that they've been working with for a couple of years. So I want to talk to that person because the goal of this 1 day evaluation isn't let's finish this all in 1 day at all costs. It's to be accurate and useful. So the short version of what I just explained isn't that I'm basing the diagnosis off of one conversation with one person. What we're doing here is that we're cross-checking different perspectives across multiple sources and multiple points of data. And it's this process that makes our evaluations accurate. So here's another question that I get. A lot of people think that a 1 day model must be rigid, but it's not. If someone shows up and sometime during the day they say to me, hey, I'm also worried about a learning issue, I can add another test. Now, that's going to extend the day a little bit, but I can be flexible. And if anything pops up during testing that makes me want to get more information about their attention abilities or their mood, or I want to drill down more on reality testing, maybe I think psychosis is going on, I have the ability to add more tests to what we're doing that day. And does that sometimes mean that the day is going to be longer? Yeah. But it also means that the evaluation is responsive to the person that's sitting in front of me. And it's not a cookie cutter protocol. Now, here's the part that I want everyone to save because these questions, these 3 different questions that I'm about to go over, can apply to any assessment clinic that you talk to. Whether you move forward with us or you want to work with somebody else, these are the 3 questions that I would ask your potential clinic. Number 1, how do you make sure that your evaluation isn't based on just one person's perspective? So asking them, do they get input from parents, partners, caregivers, ask for past records, or do they rely on one person's interview? Question number 2, how do you rule out overlap? Because autism can overlap with so many other things. ADHD, trauma, anxiety, depression. A high quality evaluation doesn't just ask, do you have autistic traits? Rather, it asks, what's the best explanation for what's going on, for this full pattern? And what else could be going on top of it? So if it is autism, what else could be going on? But if it's not autism, what can explain these issues? What explains this pattern? And question number 3 is, when will I get answers and what do I get to walk away with? Some clinics give feedback after that long process. We give feedback the same day. But in any case, the clinic should be able to tell you explicitly and clearly what happens next, when you're going to get the report, and how you can use that report moving forward. Like, what are the recommendations? If a clinic can answer those 3 questions clearly and respectfully, that's a pretty good sign. And by the way, if you want more details on the exact testing assessments that we use, what's the gold standard, how do we use them, what to expect that day, if you want more details about that, I made a video about it. And if you stick around to the ends, I'll make sure that it pops up so you can just click on it and check it out. So if you're watching this because you're tired of guessing, whether it's for you or your child. That makes sense. Needing clarity on what's going on isn't overreacting. It's your nervous system trying to find a map. And the goal of a good evaluation isn't to give a label. Rather, it's to understand what's been going on, what's made it so hard, and what are the next steps forward. If you want to learn more about our one-day evaluation process, please come check us out at Forest Psychological Clinic. We're based out of Portland, Oregon, and you can check out our website at forestpsychologicalclinic.com. And if you've got questions about the evaluation process, or if you've had a frustrating experience in the past on getting evaluated, leave it in the comments. I read them. I will answer your questions. All right, well, it was great talking to you, and I hope to see you in the next video. All right, take care, and I'll see you there. Bye.